The 2025 NFL Draft just wrapped up a day ago, but you know what we're doing today? We're doing a 2026 very early mock draft. We're going to try to look at some of these prospects here, see what teams could be addressing some of their needs next year's draft, and maybe come next year, I'll react to this video and see how accurate I do with some of these fits here. So subscribe to the channel if you are new, if you want to see that in the future. But starting off with the number one overall pick, I guess I should mention how this draft order is set. I went ahead and looked at Vegas and all of their win totals for next season, and I kind of just gauged where I think these teams will be aligning. So this is kind of roughly what I had. I think obviously we don't know what's going to happen next season. Maybe Shedeur Sanders for the Browns breaks out. Browns win 8 or 9 games next year. Not likely, but we can't say it's impossible at this point. With the Browns with the number one overall pick, they had one of the lowest win totals. I'm going to go with a quarterback, and I don't think Arch Manning is going to come out next year. It's been reported on a lot, but he's probably going to wait till the 2027 season after his senior year to come out, but we're not really going to worry about that in this video. Maybe they go all the way. They go 15-0. Arch wins the Heisman Trophy. So then there would be no reason for Arch to come back as a senior. So let's just say with the number one overall pick, the Browns go Arch Manning out of Texas. Of course, has all the pedigree with his grandfather being Archie Manning, a longtime quarterback in the NFL, his uncles, Eli and Peyton. And I think a lot of people get it mixed up. He is not the son of Eli and Peyton. It's the third Manning brother, Cooper, which I think is pretty widely known as the most athletic Manning. I think he played wide receiver, then he suffered like a back injury, forced him to stop playing football, but he was a receiver, had some good speed. And if you ever watch Arch Manning in his few reps at Texas, he's definitely a way better athlete than both of his uncles. But the Cleveland Browns, they finally get themselves generational, maybe. We'll see how good Arch is this year for Texas, but a really good prospect with the number one overall pick. And now the Giants with the second overall pick. This is again interesting because we have no idea how Jackson Dart is going to perform this year. If he's awful, we're just going to see the Giants take a quarterback here. But if he somehow shows some flashes, the Giants maybe win 7-8 games and they're not in this top range, they probably will just go best player available here. And so I think I'm going to go Caden Proctor out of Alabama and just get somebody who can protect him. The Giants have invested a lot into their defensive line. I don't think Peter Woods or TJ Parker, kind of that duo for Clemson, makes sense here because they have Kayvon Thibodeau currently. They just drafted Abdul Carter, traded a bunch for Brian Burns, and Proctor is just a mammoth. He's over 6'7", 330 pounds. He's just an anchor in pass protection, was great for Alabama last year. He needs to have a little bit more consistency in his play, but if he shows that this year, he could be one of the top picks in the draft because of his physical attributes. He has only played left tackle, so who knows if the Giants would want to invest in another one because they do have Andrew Thomas. Maybe move one of them to right tackle, then have two stalwarts on your offensive line. With the New York Jets, with the third overall pick, I'm going to go Cade Klubnik out of Clemson. They do need their franchise quarterback, and Cade is a really intriguing prospect. He really has improved year after year for Clemson, kind of broke out this past year for them, bringing him to the college football playoffs, having a really good game against Texas, who had a pretty good defense. Cade is a quarterback to watch because if he has a Heisman Trophy type of campaign, if he brings Clemson far into the playoffs, he could be in that conversation to be the number one overall pick. He definitely has that realm of possibility. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he has some good athleticism. He's ripped off multiple 50, 60-yard touchdown runs. I think he's got a fairly nice arm as well, so the physical tools are there. I do think some of his awareness, I would say sometimes his pocket presence, his decision-making, some of that stuff could be worked on. We'll see if that does improve next season at Clemson. But the Titans at number 4, they're going to get who I think is the top pass rusher in this draft. And TJ Parker out of Clemson had 12 sacks as a sophomore this past year. Another guy, again, he has another year like that or even improves off of that, he would definitely be a top 5 lock. And Clemson has a lot of these top players here, even a top cornerback, AJ Terrell's brother. They're going to be a pretty good team next year, college football. So watch out for Clemson. But TJ Parker, I think he's just going to bolster up the Titans pass rush. They got Jeffrey Simmons on the interior, but they don't really have a bona fide stud off the edge. TJ Parker could provide that juice, as you know, they really spent a lot of their picks on offense the past couple of years. And of course, Cam Ward with the number 1 overall pick. Now the Panthers at number 5, I think Caleb Downs is too good to pass up here. I think Downs, he came out like in this past year's draft, he would have been a top 5 pick. He is that good. He's a generational safety. He was a stud at Alabama as a freshman, transferred to Ohio State, transformed their secondary and their defense as well. and he can really do it all. He can play center field safety for you. He can play in the box and just be an ultimate playmaker, a great tackler, and somebody you can just move all around your defense. Think about some of the best safeties in the league. Kyle Hamilton, Derwin James. He's going to be that type of chess piece for a defense, and I think he's a fantastic prospect who, if he doesn't get hurt or have a drastic drop-off, I think he's a top 5 lock for next year's draft. Now, the Saints at number 6, they took Tyler Shough early in the second round. So again, if he just breaks out or shows some signs, they're not going to want to take a quarterback. But I'm not a huge fan of Shough. I think they would take a flyer on a quarterback. And let's go Garrett Nussmeier out of LSU and keep him in the state of Louisiana. His dad, Doug Nussmeier, is on the coaching staff for the Saints. So I do think there's a connection there. Of course, LSU just right up the road from where the Saints play. I think this could be a good fit. And Nussmeier, I am a big fan of his game. He's more of a pocket passer. He's not the biggest guy. I think he's around like 6'2". He hasn't showcased a ton of mobility. I mean, he really likes just throwing from the pocket, but he's got an absolute hose of an arm. He's a very aggressive quarterback, so he does make some careless mistakes at times. That's going to have to be cleaned up, kind of his decision making. But in terms of just NFL level throws, layering the football, throws it over the middle of the field, outside the numbers, he can do it all. And next year's quarterback class is just so good. And I really do think any of these guys have a chance to be the top quarterback and top pick in the draft, just depending team success, if they have a great season, maybe even the Heisman Trophy race. But I really like Garrett Nussmeier's game. May end up being like the most pro-ready quarterback after next season. Has been at LSU for a while. I think if he came out this year, probably would have been a first-round pick. So I like his game a lot. Another guy to keep an eye on. But the Raiders at number 7, they maybe could go quarterback, maybe go best player available. I'm going to have a trade, though. I'm going to have the Miami Dolphins move up here at pick number 14 with the Raiders. And let's just give up next year's first and 114. It doesn't really matter a ton, but let's just have this trade go through here and the Dolphins move up. And the reason I'm doing this, I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. I think the Dolphins have a chance to completely bottom out this upcoming season. I mean, I'm talking about like a top 5 pick territory for them. The Dolphins have a lot of holes all across their roster. They've got one of the most injury-prone players we've ever seen in NFL history behind center in Tua Tagovailoa. Mike McDaniel, there's been a ton of reports about him kind of losing the locker room, players not respecting him. They're going to be trading away Jalen Ramsey because Jalen Ramsey doesn't respect him and they don't see eye to eye. So I think the Dolphins are probably one injury to Tyreek Hill or Tua away from being really, really bad. I mean, there's a lot of holes on this roster. The GM, Chris Grier, Mike McDaniel, they're on the hot seat. So I think if the Dolphins kind of bottom out and don't make the playoffs, I think the playoffs is kind of the bare minimum. Vegas has their win totals set at 8.5. There's a lot of juice on the under. So I don't think the Dolphins are going to make the playoffs next year. I just don't really see it for this team. I think they are going to bottom out or at least miss the playoffs. And if that happens, they're going to get a new regime. I think a new regime is going to want a quarterback in this draft class. And so with the 7th overall pick, I'm going to go LaNorris Sellers out of South Carolina. And he is a really, really fun player. If you have not watched LaNorris Sellers play, you need to go Google some of his highlights right now because he is an absolute freak. Reminds me a lot of like Cam Newton and even like a Max Prestige, more experienced, better pocket passing quarterback of Anthony Richardson. He's 6'3", 242 pounds. He's lightning fast, has an absolute cannon of an arm, and he just escapes the pocket and has pocket awareness that I really haven't seen before. He's got a really high upside. He does need some improvement as just a pure pocket passer, learning to diagnose and read coverages. But I do think with the Dolphins kind of moving off of Tua in this scenario, who's more of a limited player, doesn't have the strongest arm, doesn't have great athleticism, Sellers is like the opposite of that. You're taking a swing on a very high upside player. I think Sellers has a chance again. Like I've said many times, for all these other quarterbacks going ahead of him, he's got a shot to be one of the top quarterbacks or the top one in this draft, depending on how good he is this upcoming season. And now the Colts at number 8, I think another quarterback comes off the board here. Let's go Drew Aller out of Penn State. That is 3 straight quarterbacks and 5 in the top 10. I guess in the 2024 draft, you had Caleb, you had Jaden Daniels, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, but I mean, you had a lot go in the first 15 picks. So I do think this could end up happening again. I mean, it's a really deep quarterback class next year. But Aller just kind of feels like a Colt. He's just a massive, huge pocket passer. He doesn't have great mobility, but he's the biggest quarterback in this draft. He's over 6'6", 240 pounds, has a whip of an arm, and just kind of feels like a Colt to me. I don't know what it is. He just feels like a Colt to me. But the Browns here, because they do have the Jaguars pick due to the Travis Hunter trade, I think they're going to go BPA. And Peter Woods, I feel like he's been on the board way too long. But with all these quarterbacks going, you get really good players to fall down the board. And Peter Woods, again, another very productive player for Clemson. He's more versatile than TJ Parker. He's bigger, so he can play on the interior of the defensive line. So he could pair with Mason Graham even. But he's a great run defender. He did show some more explosiveness and power as a pass rusher this past year. But if the Browns add Peter Woods with Myles Garrett and Mason Graham on their defensive line, that would be ridiculous. And the Falcons at number 10, let's go Jermod McCoy out of Tennessee. Just an athletic freak. He transferred from Oregon State to Tennessee. He's got great ball skills, and I think he was graded like 99 percentile with his athleticism. I mean, he is a fantastic athlete, has good size as well. Over 6 feet tall, just under 200 pounds. He's got great movement, flexibility as well. I think the Falcons, they could pair him up with AJ Terrell. They could still use some help in their secondary. They really addressed the pass rush in this past year's draft with their first 2 picks, Jalen Walker, then trading up for James Pierce Jr., who was a teammate of McCoy. And the Patriots at number 11, we're going to go on the offensive line again with Francis Magoa from Miami. I thought about Spencer Fano here, but he is more probably suited to play guard at the next level, and the Patriots kind of just drafted that in Will Campbell. But I still think they could use some more resources on their offensive line, and Magoa, he does need a little bit more refinement, like in his technique, but in terms of just being a massive human and having the upside to play tackle, I think he's a good fit here. Just outside the top 10, he did play majority of his snaps at right tackle, and that is kind of what the Patriots could use. They have Morgan Moses currently slated to play there. Now the Cowboys at number 12, running back was a very popular mock pick for them in the first round this past year, but they didn't do that. They didn't even go receiver. They went on the offensive line. I think Jeremiah Love out of Notre Dame is going to be my pick here, and he is just a great running back prospect. He's over 6 feet tall, over 200 pounds, but he's got blazing speed. He can hurdle defenders, juke them out of their shoes. He had one of the highest break tackle rates this past year for the Fighting Irish, and I think instantly he would be an impact player in the NFL and one of the best running backs in the league. I'm really high on Love. I think he's a similar level of prospect as Ashton Jeanty. Jeremiah Love is that good. The Seahawks at 13. Let's go on the offensive line again with Spencer Fano from Utah. I know they took Gray Zabel in the first round this past year, likely going to be playing guard, but they still need a lot of help on their offensive line. And Fano, while he does play tackle currently for Utah, again, he could be another guy that is better suited to play guard, but he is a fantastic run blocker. And the reason for that is because he's very athletic for his size. He can get up into the next level, make some impact blocks. He does need to work on pass protection a little bit. He could be a little bit more stronger with his anchor, and because of his arm length not being super long, that does have some problems for him at times. But I think with his athleticism, he still could theoretically play the tackle spot. But again, another guy that might just be an elite guard at the next level. The Raiders at number 14, Avion Terrell out of Clemson. I think they need help in their secondary. Probably one of the weaker units on their team, I would say at this point. And Terrell is really just a physical player. He's good in the run game. He can throw receivers off their spot. He had a lot of pass breakups this past year for Clemson. He doesn't create that many turnovers. That could be something that he works on at the next level. But I do think he has the capability to be a cornerback 1 at the next level, be similar to his brother AJ. So the Raiders, who have poured a lot of resources into their defensive line in recent drafts, Tyree Wilson, Max Crosby, of course, still there, Christian Wilkins, they paid a huge contract. I think shoring up their secondary could be a good add. And now the Steelers at 15. Let's go Sam Levitt out of Arizona State. Have another quarterback here go in the first round. And Levitt is another really interesting player, broke out this past year for Arizona State. Was a big reason why they did make the college football playoffs and had a chance take down Texas in that game. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's 6'2", over 200 pounds, but I do think he has some good physical skills. He got a pretty good arm. He can move and break tackles. I mean, that was a big part of what he did for Arizona State down the stretch, is running behind the line of scrimmage, making people miss, and then throwing the ball down the field. I do want to see how he performs this year without Cam Skadoo, because he was kind of the big catalyst on their offense. He took a lot of pressure off of Levitt. But again, another guy who could really help out his stock. He has another good season this year. And Jordan Tyson, his teammate, that could be one of the best duos to watch in college football this next year. The Vikings here at 16, Anthony Hill Jr. from Texas. I want to have him come off the board here. Just an athletic freak. He's 6'3", over 230 pounds. He's got really good speed as well. and he's just always around the football. He's honestly just a great playmaker. He's great in the run game, has 10 sacks and 5 forced fumbles in his career, and he just seems like he'd be a really good fit in Brian Flores' defense at the inside linebacker spot. I know the Vikings don't immediately have a need at linebacker because they have Ivan Pace and Blake Cashman, but I think Anthony Hill's just kind of the BPA here on the board. He can play multiple spots on the defense, just kind of be a chess piece. I think it would just be a unique fit with Brian Flores. But at number 17, Ruben Bain Jr. out of Miami. Let's have the Cardinals go after him here. He's a versatile player who can play on the edge. He can play the interior defensive line spot. He was supposed to break out for the Hurricanes this past year. He did have an injury that kind of slowed him down. But I still think the Cardinals could address their pass rush a little bit more. I know they drafted Walter Nolan, have Darius Robinson, who they drafted 2 years ago. They signed Josh Sweat in free agency. But those are still a lot of unknowns. Darius Robinson didn't do much as a rookie. Walter Nolan, he's more of an interior guy. And Josh Sweat's really their only proven edge rusher. So adding more resources there to Jonathan Gannon's defense, I think makes sense. And the Bears at 18, I thought in this past year's draft, they really should address their pass rush. And I'm going to have them do that here with Keldrick Folk out of Auburn, and he is just a mammoth of a human, over 6'6", and he's one of the best run defenders in the country. He does need some improvement as a pass rusher, kind of just setting up offensive tackles, using a plan of how to get after the passer. But we did see some improvement with him as a sophomore this past year. He was able to be more productive in the pass game. But again, if he takes another step up with his improvement, we could be talking about a guy that goes inside the top 10. But the Bears have done a great job filling a lot of holes on their team the past couple of years. I think still one of the main ones that remain is their pass rush. The Bengals at 19, I want to go with the best center in this draft, and Jake Slaughter out of Florida. He's graded out really well, and it's even more impressive when you consider all the defensive tackles in the SEC that he played against who just got drafted this past year. He's got great size. He's over 6'4", 330 pounds, but he moves really well for his size. So he can play in every single scheme. He can get up and block linebackers. And the Bengals at this point, they just need to protect Joe Burrow, prevent some more injuries from happening in the future. I mean, they signed Orlando Brown to a huge deal. They drafted Demarius Mims. I think addressing more of their interior makes sense. Ted Karras is currently their starter. He's been there for a few years now, but he's 32 years old, so not going to be playing at least at a high level for much longer. And the Buccaneers at 20, let's go Dylan Thieneman from Oregon. He transferred from Purdue after 2 seasons. But you know what you say about him? He's just a sneaky, fast, and really good athlete. Maybe the best center fielder in the country. I know we had Caleb Downs, who does have that versatility to play there, but I'm talking about with the closing speed and ball skills of Thieneman, he can be elite in the back end of the defense. So the Buccaneers with Anton Winfield, allowing to put him in the box a little bit more and just let Thieneman be your center field safety, that makes a lot of sense and could be a lot of fun. But maybe Shiloh Sanders, who the Buccaneers signed as a UDFA, breaks out this year. The Packers at 21, LT Overton from Alabama. They always kind of go after the height, weight, speed guys, and that is Overton. I thought they would address their pass rush a bit more, but they elected to go wide receiver in the first round, which was a bit surprising to me, although I did like the selection of Matthew Golden. But he transferred this past year to Alabama, and he did really show some signs of improvement from where he came from, which was Texas A&M. I think you would want a little bit more production if you are taking him in the first round. I mean, he had a couple of sacks last year. But if you look at the Packers' history of just draft picks like Rashawn Gary, Lucas Van Ness, production really isn't the end-all be-all for them. They just like taking really high upside athletes, and I think Overton kind of fits that, and also just has great versatility all across the defensive line. Now the Broncos at 22, we're going to have Jordan Tyson go off the board here. I thought the Broncos would kind of get a weapon for Bo Nix very early in this draft, but that really wasn't the case. They shocked everybody and took Jahdae Barron in the first round. I mean, they did get a running back, but I think Tyson would be a good pick at 22 and could complement Courtland Sutton fairly well. He's a really good athlete and good after the catch. He can high point the football as well, just over 6'1". He broke out for Arizona State this past year, originally from Colorado. So I think he would be a good fit in Sean Payton's offense. He can play in the slot and outside. So kind of a fun piece to move around. But Bo Nix would get himself another weapon here kind of towards the end of the first round. The Texans at 23, we're going to address the offensive line again with Armaj Reed Adams out of Texas A&M. They just need to shore up their trenches. They led the league in sacks this past year, and they really didn't address the offensive line as well as I thought they were going to do. They drafted Ariante Ursary in the middle rounds, which I did like the value of that pick, but immediately for next season, I don't think their offensive line is going to be great again. Laken Tomlinson has currently started to be their left guard, and he hasn't been good really since his 49ers days a few years ago. So we're going to address the guard position finally with Nick Caserio addressing the interior of the offensive line. The Commanders at 24, I want to go with Eric Singleton Jr. out of Georgia Tech and just get Jaden Daniels another weapon. He's been one of the most electrifying players in college football the past couple of years. He's got home run hitting speed. He can be a deep threat down the field. The Commanders, they did get Deebo Samuel, be kind of their wide receiver too, next to Terry McLaurin. It's going to be interesting to see how he plays this year. I still think he's more of like a gadget player, somebody you throw screens to, hand the ball off to him. Singleton can do much more in the receiving game, and I don't think the Commanders are done really addressing the weapons for Jaden Daniels. I mean, Zach Ertz was their second leading target last year, and he's like a 34-year-old tight end. They're going to need another receiver, and probably pretty high in next year's draft. So I like Eric Singleton fitting here to Washington. The Rams at 25, I want to go Malik Muhammad out of Texas. They were rumored to be very interested in some cornerbacks in this past year's draft, and that's still a part of their defense they need to shore up. But Muhammad isn't a fantastic athlete. He's more of like a technically sound guy, has really good instincts. And so the Rams at the end of the first round get somebody that could take over as their CB1. At 26 with the 49ers, we're going to have another corner go off the board here in AJ Harris out of Penn State. He's got good size, over 6'1", has some good length to him as well. He has experience playing man coverage. He's played some zone. 49ers spent a lot of resources on their defensive line. In this past year's draft, I think spending their first round pick on a corner makes sense, as Travarius Ward did leave in free agency. With the Chargers at 27, I want to go with a little bit of a luxury pick with Deontay Lawson out of Alabama. He's similar to Jahad Campbell as just a freak athlete. I think he even might be a little bit better in terms of his pass coverage. He's got a little bit more instincts because he has played that position for longer. It's just the natural position. Campbell started off as edge rusher for Bama. At 28 for Detroit, Tyreek Sapp out of Florida, I think kind of fits what they like. Just a very physical player on the edge. He doesn't have elite twitch or bend. That's not really his game, but in terms of setting the edge, being a great run defender, even winning with power, I think he'd be a good complement to Aiden Hutchinson on their defense. The Chiefs at 29, we're going to go Danny Dennis Sutton out of Penn State. Just a really big player. Has a chance to be the next Penn State defensive lineman that does go in the first round. He's got just great physical tools. Again, not the most athletic or twitchiest player off the edge. He's not going to be Abdul Carter getting after the quarterback, but in terms of in the run game, being able to set the edge again, kind of similar to Tyreek Sapp, he's going to provide that. He may never emerge as some elite pass rusher, but I still think he's got a pretty high ceiling, especially as a top-end run defender at the next level. And the Bills at 30, let's go Carnell Tate out of Iowa State. And I think he's kind of the receiver the Bills may be missing. They've got their slot guy and yards after the catch receiver in Shakir. They've got their jump ball guy in Keon Coleman. I think Tate could be their separator, intermediate / chain mover. I think that makes a lot of sense for them, and they could address that at the end of the first round. With the Ravens at 31, let's go Caleb Banks from Florida. I think they could just use a little bit more beef on the interior of their defensive line. They've got Travis Jones playing that nose tackle spot, but they had Michael Pierce play a lot. Like in the playoffs, he was one of their, I would say, better defensive linemen. I think Caleb Banks can fit in that role, over 6'5", 325 pounds. And it's really hard to find productive and somewhat athletic players at that size. So I think Banks could be a good fit in Baltimore and kind of fill that need for them. But the Eagles at 32, receiver was seen as a pretty big need for them this past year. Maybe AJ Brown gets traded. Again, we don't exactly know how these things are going to play out, but I want to put Kevin Concepcion here to the Eagles and have him be the last pick of this first round. And he's probably a guy that's better suited to play in the slot, a smaller receiver, but he's got great agility and elusiveness after the catch. He's got some good speed to him as well, and could just be a good complement. That Eagles offense, make it a little bit more explosive, and somebody Hurts can just up it off to allow him to pick up 10 yards plus on a screen. But here is a final look at a way too early 2026 NFL mock draft. Again, obviously, a lot can change. Some of these players could even maybe go back to school if they do not perform well this upcoming college season. But obviously, this is kind of more just to introduce you guys into some of these prospects in next year's draft. But I'm really excited for it. I think next year's class has a lot more high-end and top players than last year's did. But let me know in the comments section below if you liked who I had your team selecting, and if not, your reasoning why. But subscribe to the channel if you are new. Drop a like on the video if you did enjoy it. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you guys in my next one.